Four teenagers mocked a quiet old man on a city bus, thinking he was just another frail stranger with a cane. But when he finally looked up and said one word, Vietnam, the entire bus fell silent. What he told them next changed everyone on board forever. It was late in the afternoon when the city bus pulled up to the corner of Jefferson Avenue and Elmwood Street. The brakes hissed. The doors creaked open. One by one, tired passengers climbed aboard. Their faces looked worn, like they'd carried the whole day on their shoulders. Among them was an elderly black man named Mr. Harris. He stepped onto the bus slowly, his movements steady but careful, as if each step held its own story. He held a wooden cane, old and smooth from years of use. In his other hand, a small cloth bag with groceries dangled gently at his side. Bread, maybe milk, a few apples. He made his way to the back of the bus, ignoring the rush of bodies and the buzz of phones. No rush. He took his time. When he reached an empty seat near the window, he sat down with a soft sigh, resting the cane against his knee. Outside, the golden evening sun touched his face. It lit up the deep lines carved into his skin, lines that spoke of decades lived and lessons learned. Mr. Harris didn't look around. He didn't speak. He just gazed out the window quietly, like he was remembering something only he could see. Nobody really noticed him. Maybe a little kid stole a glance before turning away. Maybe someone nodded politely. But for the most part, the world on that bus moved right past him. The bus engine rumbled again and pulled away from the stop. It crawled through the busy streets, carrying its mix of people, voices, and tired breaths. A phone rang. Someone laughed. A man up front tapped quickly on his screen. But in the middle of all that noise, Mr. Harris stayed still, a calm presence like an anchor in the wind. He looked out the window, but he was somewhere else. Maybe years away. Maybe in a place no one else on that bus had ever seen. But all of that peace was about to change. Just a few blocks later, the bus came to a stop near Lincoln High School. And that's when the atmosphere shifted. 4 teenagers jumped on board. Loud, joking, full of energy that didn't sit still. They were the kind of kids who laughed before thinking, their voices rising above everything else. One wore a backwards baseball cap. Another had a buzz cut and a smirk too big for his face. One had a hoodie pulled tight around his head, and the last kid, smaller than the rest, followed closely behind. They didn't head straight for seats. Instead, they stayed up front, scanning the bus like it was their stage, looking for someone to notice them, someone to tease, someone to challenge. Then one of them, Trevor, the tall one in the cap, spotted Mr. Harris. "Yo, check him out," he said with a low chuckle, nudging his friend. The others followed his gaze. Their smirks spread like wildfire. "Dude looks like he missed the stop for the nursing home," another kid laughed. Their footsteps echoed as they moved down the aisle toward the back. Passengers shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Some glanced at Mr. Harris. Others looked away, pretending not to notice. The teens stopped right in front of him. Trevor leaned over the seat in front. "Hey, old man," he said, cocking his head. "You get lost? Bus ain't headed to the past." Mr. Harris didn't move. He didn't blink. His hands rested on the cane like it was part of him. His gaze stayed outside, watching something only he could see. That silence? It only fueled the boys more. The one in the hoodie, Eli, stepped up. "That cane just for looks, or is it the only thing keeping you standing?" He snorted. The others burst out laughing. No one on the bus spoke. A woman near the front clutched her purse tighter. A man in a suit kept his eyes glued to his phone. Everyone seemed to agree, best not to get involved. But the boys weren't done. Not yet. The one with the buzz cut, Derek, squinted. "Bet he's got cash on him. What's in the bag, Grandpa? Cat food?" More laughter. Louder now. And still, Mr. Harris didn't flinch, but something in the air began to shift, because sometimes the quietest person in the room is the one with the loudest story to tell. And these boys, they had no idea who they were talking to. Not yet. But they would, very soon. The bus jolted slightly as it turned a corner, but Mr. Harris didn't move. His grip on the cane was calm, steady, almost like he'd done this before, weathered storms louder than 4 teenage boys on a city bus. Trevor, still riding the high of his friend's laughter, leaned closer. His voice dropped to a mocking whisper. "What's the matter, Grandpa?" he said, tapping the old man's cane with the toe of his sneaker. "Cat got your tongue?" Another round of snickers erupted behind him. Still, no reaction. Mr. Harris didn't even blink. He kept his eyes on the window. But something in the way he held himself had shifted. He wasn't just sitting anymore. He was waiting. The smallest boy, Jaden, fidgeted where he stood. His eyes darted from Mr. Harris to his friends, then back again. He pulled at the sleeve of his hoodie and said under his breath, "Maybe we should chill." But Trevor ignored him. So did Derek and Eli. Eli leaned over, his tone sharper now. "Yo, are you deaf or something? Or maybe you don't speak English?" He grinned, looking around like he was expecting applause. But the bus had gone quiet. Passengers weren't laughing, they weren't smiling, they were watching and waiting. Finally, slowly. Mr. Harris turned his head. His eyes met Trevor's. They were calm, not angry, not afraid, just steady, deep, like the ocean before a storm. That look? It wasn't the look of someone who'd been insulted. It was the look of someone who'd seen too much to be bothered by noise. Trevor stepped back without meaning to, just half a step. But the shift was real. The tension in the air tightened. Then Mr. Harris spoke. His voice was quiet, but it cut through the bus like a blade through still water. "Do you boys always find fun in bothering strangers?" Silence. Complete silence. Even the engine seemed to hum quieter than before. Trevor blinked, caught off guard. Eli opened his mouth, but nothing came out. Derek let out a dry laugh. "What's it to you, old man?" Mr. Harris tilted his head slightly. "I've met young men like you before," he said. "Different time, different place." He leaned forward just a bit. They didn't laugh so much once they found out what real fear feels like. The words dropped heavy, like bricks on the floor. Jaden took another step back. Trevor scoffed. But there was hesitation now. "What?" he said, his voice louder than before. "You gonna scare us with your cane?" The bus hit a small bump in the road, and Eli grabbed the nearest rail for balance. Mr. Harris didn't budge. He sat straight now, his cane planted firmly on the ground, one hand resting gently on the top, the other in his lap. And then he raised his chin. "You think this cane is what I lean on?" he asked softly. There was no boast in his voice, no threat, only truth. "No, boys, this cane's just wood." He paused. "What holds me up is something far stronger." Trevor's laugh this time was weak, thin. The smirk on his face wavered. "Yeah," he said. "What's that?" Mr. Harris looked at each of them, one by one, then he said it. "When I was your age, I carried something much heavier than a cane." He leaned back in his seat, eyes still locked on theirs. "I carried a rifle." There was a pause, a silence so complete it felt like the world outside the windows stopped moving. He let the words settle. "I was 19, not much older than you." And then, just one word. "Vietnam." The name landed like a stone in a still pond, and every ripple it made reached every soul on that bus. The word Vietnam hit different. It wasn't loud, it wasn't dramatic, but it changed everything. The bus, once buzzing with tension and noise, had gone completely still. Trevor's mouth hung half open, but no words came. Eli shifted his weight, trying to hide his unease behind crossed arms. Derek looked away, suddenly interested in the floor. And Jaden, he just stared. Mr. Harris didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. His words came out like slow thunder, soft but impossible to ignore. "Back then, we didn't have time for jokes," he said. "We didn't stand around bothering strangers just to pass time. We were busy, trying to stay alive." He paused, looking out the window like he could still see it. The heat, the jungle, the gunfire. "I had friends who didn't come back," he said, almost to himself. "Good men, boys really, brave, loyal. And they didn't get the chance to grow old. They didn't get to sit on a bus and look out a window in peace." The teens didn't speak. Passengers leaned forward ever so slightly, quiet, watching, listening. Mr. Harris glanced down at his cane, fingers tightening just for a moment. "And those of us who did come home," he said, "we brought more than gear and uniforms. We brought scars." He tapped his chest gently, then his temple. "Some you can see, most you can't." Jaden looked at him differently now. He didn't look scared. He looked ashamed. Even Eli, who'd laughed the loudest before, had gone quiet. His arms were no longer crossed. He was just still. Trevor, always the boldest, cleared his throat. "We didn't mean anything by it," he mumbled. "We were just messing around." Mr. Harris turned to face him directly, not harshly, just honestly. "I know you didn't," he said. "But words matter, son, and you never know what someone's carrying." He leaned back again, his voice gentler now, but still strong. "You see an old man with a cane. You think he's fragile. You think he's weak." He shook his head slowly. "But you don't know the miles on his feet, the nights he's spent awake, the friends he's buried." His eyes swept across the boys again. "You don't know what it's like to wake up from a nightmare that started 50 years ago." Trevor looked down. Eli rubbed the back of his neck. Jaden kept staring, like he wanted to say something but didn't know how. Then Derek, the one with the buzz cut, finally spoke. His voice was different now, lower, honest. Did you lose people out there?" Mr. Harris nodded slowly. "More than I care to count." The weight of those words hung in the air. Passengers blinked back tears. A woman near the middle wiped her cheek. Even the bus driver, eyes focused on the road, seemed to sit a little straighter. "And not just over there," Mr. Harris added. "Some came back, but they didn't really come home. You'd be surprised how easy it is to look strong and still break." The smallest of the group, Jaden, took a step forward. His voice was barely more than a whisper. "We didn't mean to disrespect you," he said. Mr. Harris gave a small nod. "Disrespect isn't always in the words," he replied. "It's in how you carry yourself." There was no lecture in his tone, no anger, just a quiet kind of truth. Something heavier than shouting, something deeper than shame. The bus rolled on, turning past a row of shuttered stores and flickering streetlights. And for the first time since the boys got on, nobody said a word. They weren't scared anymore. They were thinking, really thinking, and for some of them, maybe for the first time in a long time. For a few long moments, the only sound was the low hum of the engine and the faint rattle of loose windows as the bus rolled on. No laughter, no smart remarks, just silence, the kind that settles in your chest and makes you sit with yourself. Mr. Harris sat the same way he had before, quiet, composed, his cane resting once again beside his knee. But everything had changed, not in him, in them. Trevor rubbed the back of his neck and looked down at his shoes. His voice, when it came, was almost too soft to hear. "Look, we were just messing around," he said. "Didn't think it would matter." Mr. Harris didn't flinch, but his eyes found the boy's face. Messing around can turn into something else real fast, he said gently. And sometimes you can't walk back from it. The words didn't come like a threat. They came like a memory. Eli, who had been the loudest before, spoke next. His voice was unsteady. Did you really see people get hurt? He asked. Mr. Harris nodded slowly, his gaze steady but distant. Too many, he said. Men who had families waiting for them. Men who were just trying to make it home. He looked down for a moment, his voice quieter now. And not all of them died over there. He let those words sit in the air. Some of the strongest ones didn't make it through the piece. Passengers shifted in their seats. A woman near the front pressed her hand to her mouth. A man further back bowed his head slightly, as if in silent prayer. Jaden stepped forward again, this time with more purpose. His voice cracked a little. We didn't mean to act like it didn't matter, like you didn't matter. Mr. Harris gave him a small nod, the lines on his face softening just enough. I know, son, he said, but I'll tell you something I've learned. People won't always remember what you said. He paused and looked around at all four boys. But they will remember how you made them feel. The bus came to a gentle stop at the next corner. The doors opened with a sigh, but no one got off. No one even moved. Not a single passenger reached for their bags or pressed the button. They were all still watching the man at the back, still listening. Trevor, now visibly uncomfortable, stepped back and looked around the bus. He saw the eyes on him, not with anger, but with expectation. A woman near the front finally broke the silence. You boys don't even know how lucky you are, she said softly. You just got a lesson most people never hear in their whole life. The boys turned, faces flushed, shoulders low. They didn't argue. They didn't talk back. They just nodded, slowly. Then, one by one, they moved toward the front of the bus. No swagger, no wisecracks, just quiet footsteps. As they passed Mr. Harris, each of them looked at him. Some gave a nod. One mumbled an apology. Another simply whispered, "Thank you." Mr. Harris didn't gloat, didn't smile. He just nodded back, calm, still, unmoved in every way, except deeper. The doors opened again at the next stop. This time the boys got off. Their laughter stayed behind. Their noise stayed behind. And something else followed them out into the night. Something heavier than a backpack. Something called respect. The doors closed behind the boys with a soft hiss. And for a moment the bus stayed quiet. Not the awkward kind of silence from earlier, but a thoughtful one, a peaceful one. Mr. Harris turned his gaze back to the window. The world outside hadn't changed. Same sidewalks, same tired buildings, same flickering traffic lights. But inside that bus, something had shifted. Passengers began to breathe a little easier. A few people looked at each other for the first time, like neighbors finally realizing they were in the same story. Someone near the middle whispered, "I didn't know." Another answered softly, "Me neither." At the front of the bus, a young woman, maybe in her 20s, turned in her seat. She looked toward the back, where Mr. Harris sat. "Thank you," she said quietly, "for what you did, and for what you've been through." Mr. Harris gave a small nod, his expression warm but reserved. "I did what I had to," he said. "That's all any of us can do." The engine hummed as the bus moved on, passing rows of quiet houses and dimly lit storefronts. People sat still in their seats, but their minds were traveling. You could feel it in the air. Some were thinking about their fathers. Some were thinking about their mistakes. Some were just thinking. Mr. Harris adjusted his cane slightly. His joints moved slow, but his posture stayed proud, like a man who knew exactly what he stood for, even if the world had forgotten to ask. The young woman spoke again. "But What do you think matters now, after everything? Mr. Harris looked at her, not with a quick answer, but with care. What matters, he said, is what you do with the life you have, what you do with the chances you're given. He paused. And how you treat people when no one's watching. The words landed softly, but deeply. The kind of words that stay with you long after the bus has stopped. The next corner was Ashland Avenue. The bus slowed, and Mr. Harris began to rise. A few passengers stood up almost instinctively to make space, not out of pity, but out of something better, respect. He stepped toward the exit, one careful foot at a time, his cane steady beneath him. At the door he paused. His eyes swept gently over the passengers, people who had once looked away from him, people who had just watched something they wouldn't forget. "Be kind to each other," he said. His voice wasn't loud, but it carried. "You never know the battle someone's fighting." With that, he stepped onto the sidewalk. The doors folded shut behind him, and the bus rolled on. But the passengers? They weren't the same. They sat a little straighter. They looked each other in the eye. One man pulled out his phone and texted his dad. A woman held her child's hand a little tighter, and in the empty aisle where those boys had stood, something lingered. A story, a lesson, a quiet reminder that strength doesn't always shout. Sometimes it just sits quietly, holding a cane, looking out a window, waiting for the world to remember what matters. And maybe, just maybe, those boys walking home under the streetlights carried that lesson too, carried it in their silence, carried it in their footsteps, carried it in their hearts.